Lost Love, The Fateful Reunion. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Late Night Story Corner. Today's story is a deeply emotional segment about the lingering regret of first love, life's choices, and the thin line of fidelity. It tells the tale of a woman who has settled down but is abruptly pulled back into a whirlwind of memories when her ex-boyfriend unexpectedly reappears. Please join us in listening to Lost Love, The Fateful Reunion. Babe, there's a call for you. Sarah was working in her art studio when she heard her husband, Daniel, call from the living room. Her hands were covered in paint, so she called back. "Who is it, honey? Just answer it for me. It's an unknown number." "It's a strange number, my love. Just leave it," Daniel said. "Never mind then. If it's urgent, they'll call back later. I'm busy right now." Sarah didn't pay attention to unknown numbers because the number kept calling, one attempt after another. Sarah finally washed her hands and went to answer the phone because her husband had a strict rule of never touching her phone. Picking up the phone, Sarah's heart skipped a beat because it was a familiar number. Although not saved, it had always been familiar to Sarah for over 4 years now. Many times, she had wanted to call the owner of that number but didn't have the courage. This was the first time in 4 years that she had received calls from this number. Noticing the unusual change in his wife's expression, Daniel asked, "Why don't you call her back? Maybe she needs something, or maybe there's a problem at the company." Sarah nodded, asked her husband to watch her sketches on the easel, and went into the bedroom, closing the door. She gazed wistfully at the number. It was Ethan's number. He was her entire youth. Sarah and Ethan fell in love during high school. It was an innocent, pure relationship, accompanied by a promise to marry once they both got into college. She thought their love story would have a perfect ending, but Ethan announced that he had to go study abroad in London. Sarah felt devastated. She had waited throughout high school and 5 years of university just for the day they would graduate. They viewed the long distance as a challenge on their path to happiness. The day Ethan left, he promised her everything. Until one day, while she was on her way home in Chicago, she received a text message. "Let's break up," from Ethan. She frantically called back, but Ethan had blocked all means of contact. Sarah didn't understand the reason. She was tormented, heartbroken, and suffered from insomnia for months. Her parents knew and advised. Sarah suffered from depression, and after some time, her parents had to take her to a clinic for treatment. She also lost contact with Ethan from that day on. It took Sarah nearly 2 years to feel better. She didn't forget the pain, but chose to bury it deep in her heart. It lay dormant there, untouched. Nearly a year ago, she decided to marry. Daniel was the only son of her parents' acquaintance. He loved Sarah and wanted to care for her, even though he knew she would never forget that first love. He still held on to the hope that one day he would fill the empty spaces in Sarah's heart so that she would belong only to him. Daniel was a very good man. When he came home from his job in advertising, he would help her with. She resolved to bury everything in her memory to avoid hurting her husband. Yet now those numbers appearing on her phone screen made her feel like she was going insane. The memories rushed back, happiness and sorrow appearing in her mind. It turned out she hadn't forgotten. She had never forgotten. The phone rang again, interrupting her thoughts. Sarah hesitated, quickly wiping away tears she hadn't realized were falling. She pressed the answer button. "Hello, are you well?" The 3 words spoken haltingly on the other end were too much for Sarah to bear after the torment she had endured for 4 years. Just hearing Ethan's voice made Sarah burst into sobs. She didn't answer him, only hearing him urgently ask, "Sarah, are you there? You recognize me, don't you? You still remember my number, don't you?" Sarah was choked up and couldn't utter a word. How could she forget? This was the number it was the sequence of numbers she said would represent their love. She had used that number as her phone passcode for 5 years and only changed it the day she married. I'm still well. How are you? I'm back in the US, babe. How are things with you now? How are things with Sarah now? What should she answer? That she was fine, had found a job as an artist after 2 years of depression from missing him? That she was very fine, had married a husband who loved her very much? That she was very happy now? But she didn't dare to say it. Sarah didn't know what she was afraid of. She was afraid Ethan would be sad if he knew she had a family. Thinking this, Sarah laughed at herself. Maybe he already had a wife and children and had I got married, and I'm still living in the house my parents signed over to me a while ago. Sarah gently said the words. I'm married now. Sarah heard Ethan's sigh, then fall silent for a moment. Perhaps he was also recalling old memories, but what meaning did they hold now? Seeing Ethan stay silent, she asked further, Are you married yet? Did you just get back, or have you been back for a while? Sarah was determined to ask him directly. Is your wife with you too? Ethan stammered for a moment, then hesitantly replied, She's in the US. We're getting married next month. Could you and your husband come? Sarah's heart ached. Even though she had married first, hearing this still hurt so much. He called her just to invite her to his wedding, to watch him walk down the aisle with someone else after he had promised to walk down the aisle with her. She was selfish and didn't want to see that scene, so she immediately refused. I think it's better if... Could we meet up? I have a lot of things I want to tell you, Ethan asked. Sarah didn't know how to answer when she heard her husband knocking on the door. Babe, what's taking you so long in there? Lunch is ready. Come eat, my dear. Yes, I'm done. I'm coming right away. Daniel's words were heard by Ethan on the other end of the line. She thought he would be sad when she called someone else husband, but perhaps she was wrong. Ethan showed no reaction in his voice. Well, go have lunch then. When you can, give me a call to meet up. Even as two old friends meeting again, that's fine, Ethan said. Sarah hung up. As two old friends? Nearly 10 years of her youth had been reduced to just 2 words. Old friends. The food had no taste in her mouth. Daniel noticed she was acting strangely, but he didn't ask. He just quietly put food on her plate, because if he didn't, she would just eat plain rice. Perhaps her husband understood everything. She picked up her phone and texted the familiar number. We can meet tomorrow. The message was answered quickly. I'll wait for you at the cafe across from the university. What time can you make it? That was the cafe where Ethan and she had so many memories. Whenever she argued with him, she would hide there, choose a table near the maple tree, and wait for him to come and comfort her. She texted back to Ethan, I'll be there at 9 a.m. She locked her phone and pulled the blanket over her head, stopping the flow of tears. She wanted to look beautiful when she saw him again. Hearing the door open and her husband entering the room, Sarah secretly wiped her face dry and forced a bright smile. I'm going for coffee with Daniel happily nodded. Then I get to sleep in a little longer. Sarah knew her husband noticed her strange behavior, but he didn't say anything. Sarah turned to hug her husband and go to sleep. She silently apologized to him and hoped he would let me make a mistake for just one day. After tomorrow, she would forget everything so that both she and Ethan could focus on their own small families. At 9 a.m. the next day, Sarah arrived at the cafe. In fact, she had already seen Ethan waiting for her there. It was still the familiar table under the old maple tree. Ethan looked very different now. He was more mature and steady, but still had that smile, those eyes, the familiar things that always appeared in her dreams. He gave her a light hug as a greeting, ordered her a cold brew, her favorite, and sat quietly looking at her. All the longing was expressed through their eyes. Sarah remembered exactly why she was there. She coldly asked him, "Can I know the reason you broke up with me that day, Ethan?" "I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking clearly then. My parents forced me to go study abroad to keep me away from you," Ethan admitted. Sarah froze. His parents didn't like her. He abandoned her because he listened to his parents. "When did you fall in love with her?" Sarah didn't know why she asked that question. She was even more surprised by his answer. "I don't love her. She was chosen by my parents," Ethan replied. Sarah laughed. "You have no opinion of your own. You weren't like that before." "If it wasn't me, it would be anyone else, right? What's the point of having your own opinion?" Sarah tremblingly held her drink. "What do you mean by that? Why didn't you stand up to your parents before and agree to the compromise? Since I found out you got married, I just didn't care about anything. Whatever my parents arranged, I just followed," Ethan explained. "Ah, so Ethan knew she had a family. He must have been sad, must have been hurt." Seeing Sarah cry, they were like they had gone back in time. One person sulking and crying, the other holding her tight and whispering sweet words to comfort her. Perhaps the old saying is true that old love never dies. Neither of them said anything, but they knew that right now they needed each other for comfort, to satisfy the persistent longing of all those years. After a while of crying, telling their stories, and expressing the buried love, Ethan drove Sarah back to his house. That was the house where he would live with his fiancée. The other girl had never once stepped inside that house. This was the place Ethan chose to live with the person he loved, but it was no longer Sarah. On the way home, neither of them spoke. Sarah knew what would happen next, but she didn't refuse. She let Ethan drive her home. She ignored the fact that what was about to happen made her feel guilty towards her husband back home, but she was completely caught up in her current emotion. The feelings of the past clung tightly to her, not allowing her to go the right way. The moment the door opened, Ethan passionately embraced Sarah. She responded with equal fervor. The clumsy kisses of the past were gone, replaced by more They tumbled onto the sofa in the middle of the room. All the clothes that got in the way were discarded. Sarah blushed and clung tightly to Ethan. The whole process unfolded without a word. They silently indulged the desires they had longed for all this time. Ethan was no longer the inexperienced young man he once was. Sarah was no longer the shy girl she was whenever she was close to her boyfriend. Both of them were more mature, both in thought and in their bedroom experience. Ethan kissed Sarah's face tenderly, with utmost indulgence. Sarah closed her eyes, savouring the longing she had dreamt of countless nights. Their youth had also been as passionate as this intimate moment today, but they had missed each other. Sarah could still feel the warmth in Ethan's breath and his strong embrace. She was immersed in that warmth, just like the happy days before. Truly, Ethan still evoked such strong feelings in her. Her husband, Daniel, was not like Ethan. She treated her relationship with her husband like a mandatory duty. As for Ethan, he had never been intimate with his fiancée. They had not met in person, only through family, and during moments of frustration while studying overseas, he sometimes visited the red light district or had affairs with various people. All of it was just to satisfy his physical needs. He never truly loved anyone. His love remained forever for the first girl he ever loved. Likewise, Sarah's entire love would forever belong to Ethan. Lying completely in Ethan's arms, Sarah closed her eyes in a daze, but still heard his warm voice by her ear. "Did I do better than before? Did I satisfy you more than your husband?" Sarah lifted her head to look at him. "You are still you, and you— What about my husband? Why bring him up now?" Ethan seemed jealous. He still wanted to ask, "I just want to know if I'm better than your husband, that's all. I have no interest in him, Perhaps it's because I don't love him, so I just see being with him as my duty. For all these years, I've still dreamed of a day when I could lie in your arms again, like before, Sarah said, teary-eyed. Ethan turned to face her and but it can't be any more, Ethan. We don't belong to each other anymore, Sarah said. Ethan felt incredibly guilty towards Sarah. He didn't know what to say to comfort her at this moment. All the mistakes are mine for not. His lips gently moved to deeper locations. Everything about Sarah was still the same as before, still enchanting to Ethan. Ethan continued the next battles. They were like two hungry animals, rushing into each other passionately. They moved from the living room to the bedroom. Clothes were scattered everywhere, carrying the passion of youth, the frenzy of longing, and the pent-up repression that had been buried for so long. They went through one climax after another, reaching new heights. Neither of them intended to stop. They held each other tightly, afraid that letting go for even a moment would mean losing each other forever. All their youthful energy and fervor were devoted to each other in this one passionate encounter. The sound of the doorbell was the moment Ethan startled, ending the climax. He closed his eyes and collapsed onto Sarah, ignoring the incessantly ringing doorbell. Sarah worried about who was outside. She urged Ethan to go check, but he told her to ignore it and to just pretend he wasn't home. After a while, they didn't hear anything else. Perhaps the person thought Ethan really wasn't home. Sarah looked at her phone and saw it was late. She expressed her affection for Ethan and said she wanted to go home. Her husband was waiting. Ethan didn't want to let her leave, but he had no right to hold her back. Both of them now had their own happiness. They could only meet secretly like this, not openly. They both stood up, showered, and got ready. Ethan offered to drive Sarah home. Sarah refused, wanting to take an Uber instead, as she didn't want to bother Ethan, and she was afraid her husband might see them. Before she could open the door, Ethan hugged. He whispered softly in her ear, "We can still meet up later, can't we, babe?" "I don't think we should, Ethan. Being together today is enough," Sarah replied. "I don't want that. I still want to see you many more times. Please don't refuse me," Ethan. Sarah refused with her mouth, but in her heart, she deeply wanted to continue these passionate encounters. But were both she and Ethan committing adultery now? Should she disregard everything and live according to her true love? Her heart, so should she continue? Sarah put a big question mark in her mind, then turned and said to Ethan, "I'll give you my answer later." She let go of Ethan and quickly walked out the door. The afternoon sun today was so gloomy, just like her own life. This story reminds us of the power and danger of first love. Regret and self-determination. Ethan's choice to follow his family's wishes led to the breakup and lasting pain for both of them. The lesson is, be brave enough to assert your own convictions in major life decisions, especially marriage, to avoid future regret and hurting others. Marital boundaries. Even though Sarah may not love Daniel as passionately as Ethan, she is still. Adultery, whether driven by longing or impulse, is an act of disrespect and deeply hurts the husband who loves and accepts her unconditionally. The lesson is, once you choose marriage, you must respect the commitment or